Chapter 3, Mishnah 6. Thus far, this chapter has dealt with the separation and purification of the Kohen appointed to burn the Parah. The chapter now describes how he went from the Beis HaMikdash, where he stayed for his period of separation, to the place on the Mount of Olives, outside Jerusalem, where the Parah would be burned. He could not walk on the ground because he might become Tameh by passing over an unknown grave. The Mishnah explains how he was protected from Tumah as he made this trip. They would make a ramp that extended from the Temple Mount to the place on the Mount of Olives where the Parah would be burned. The ramp was supported by arches that were built on top of arches, i.e. 2 rows of arches, one on top of the other. And the dome of each arch in the top row was built over a closed part, i.e. pillar, of the arches in the bottom row. The arches in the top row overlapped the arches in the bottom row, so that the spaces in the upper row were positioned over the pillars in the lower row, and the spaces in the lower row were positioned under the pillars of the upper row. This arrangement ensured that there would be space under every part of the ramp. These spaces were needed because there might be an unknown grave in the valley between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives, and the spaces would then prevent the tumah of the grave from rising through the ramp and contaminating people and utensils that were on the ramp. It was on this ramp that the Kohen who was to burn the Parah itself and all of its helpers would leave the Temple Mount and go to the Mount of Olives. Because the ramp was above the ground and it was supported by 2 rows of arches, they were protected from Tumah.